Lords to augment various merfolk. He's incorporating True Name Nemesis, which is a merfolk, alongside Phantasmal Image and Sword Temptation. David has also added Gitaxian Probes into his deck as well, and then a mana base of 11 islands, 4 Mutavaults, 3 Mistress Factories, and 3 Cavern of Souls.
Right, I'm sure you're a big fan of the adding of Gitaxian Probe to that list, as you're a proponent of playing it in everything.
I'm actually not a fan of adding it in this deck
Really?
list, to be honest with you. I am a fan of it in decks that have Delver of Secrets, Snapcaster Mage, a lot of combo decks. This is actually one of the few decks in Legacy that I would not advocate putting Gitaxian Probe in, but David sits here at 6-1, so having quite a nice run for himself here and potentially in a position to win and possibly draw next round.
Yep, and of course against Blue-Eye Red Delver with 4 Delver, 4 Stoneforge, 2 True Name, along with all of the punishing disruption and counter spells that is want to be in that list.
So we've seen a lot of Aether Vial decks on camera today, a lot of Goblins so far in the tournament, and Merfolk, the other popular Aether Vial creature deck.
Right, we even had a situation where we had 2 Goblins in the feature match area at the same time.
Monitor. So Michael Major starts off the action here with a Gitaxian Probe and shows Phantasmal Image, Aether Vial, Lord of Atlantis, Mistress Factory, Basic Island, and 2 Marrow Rejuries. So the cat quickly out of the bag.
Yes. No mistake here. A couple of Lord effects, a Vial.
Now, Michael Major's deck, on the other hand, with the presence of Delver of Secrets and Meddling Mage in the sideboard, is a deck where I really do like adding Gitaxian Probe.
All right. And he has the Tundra, but no Delver, so.
And
one Gitaxian Probe deserves another. We get to see Major's hand here with Lightning Bolt, Swords, True Name Nemesis, a couple lands.
critically a Stoneforge Mystic, one of the more powerful tools against Merfolk, but at least David knows that the coast is clear for his Aether Vial, which is one of the most powerful tools in Merfolk.
Get that in and then slide your creatures under the counter magic. And that's what he opts for.
So we're going to see a pretty classic race, most likely in this game, of Merfolk trying to beat Stoneforge Mystic, not necessarily by killing Stoneforge Mystic, but by using enough Island Walk effects and Quick Lords to outrace it.
Just have unblockable creatures with, tons of Lord abilities.
So we'll see what
Majors goes with the Stoneforge Mystic. Umezawa Jite.
So Major's with a bunch of Lightning Bolts in his hand, so there's a reasonable chance he can contain David's Lords. And if he's able to do that, then this Jite has a very good chance of running away with the game.
Right, once there's too many Lords on the battlefield, Lightning Bolt will not cut it.
Now, a critical addition to David's deck list is True Name Nemesis, which has been much more popular in decks like the one that you see Michael playing rather than conventional Merfolk. But Blue-White Rare Delver not really flush with answers to opposing True Name Nemesis. It's basically counterspell or bust.
Right. Often forgot that it's just a Merfolk, You don't think of Merfolk as hexproof creatures.
There was a lot of hype about that card when it initially came out as a card for Merfolk to improve that deck, but naturally it ended up improving Stoneforge Mystic decks more than Merfolk.
Shocking, it improved blue decks across the board.
So Michael appears to be deciding right now between using Lightning Bolt and Stoneforge Mystic this turn or deploying True Name Nemesis.
If you're looking to race, what is the best option there between those two?
I personally prefer trying to resolve True Name Nemesis this turn, I feel like. But Michael's going to pass it back. It's very close.
Plays the Misty Rainforest and passes. And David vials in a Curse Catcher.
I just think it's critical to get a durable attacker for your True Name Nemesis online as fast as possible.
Right.
If you're stuck trying to attack with your Stoneforge Mystic into David's Lords, it can be kind of cumbersome.
Here comes Marrow Rejury.
Cavern of Souls presumably naming Merfolk here.
And he's going to get in there with the Curse Catcher.
And Michael really flushed with removal, source of plowshares to go along with his bolts.
Yeah. Pick your removal here from Michael. Is there a situation where he just takes this and doesn't even worry about it?
Well, I think he's pretty much committed to using his spells, one of his spells this turn at least, because mana is a big bottleneck for him. If he loses this game, it's going to be probably to not being efficient enough. And so I think he wants to cast one of the spells in his hand almost no matter what's happening this turn, because his mana is going to be tied up. Playing Umezawa's Jitte, then equipping it, moving around the board, casting other removal spells in subsequent turns.
Right. I guess if you were on the no removal plan, you wanted to get the True Name Nemesis into play. Otherwise, you're wasting your mana there.
Yeah.
And he does go for the bolt on the Regery. Puts the Stoneforge in front, but he vials in a Lord.
Now we see Source of Plowshares, and this might be, we might have a fight over this.
And David instantly pitches the Force of Will.
And David was in a lot of trouble here, but now he's, there's no Umezawa's Jitte in play for the time being, nor is there a creature to equip it to. And so this turn was a pretty big swing, assuming that Michael doesn't have any sort of counterspell to fight over this Force of Will.
Yeah, plus he doesn't even get to get his Jitte onto the battlefield here.
And David with an Island Walk effect in play now, so all sorts of good stuff happening for David that turn.
Yeah. Now the pressure is on. Michael deciding what he wants to do here.
Looks like he's tapping a red, possibly for Lightning Bolt on Lord of Atlantis.
You would be correct. Got to get that Island Walk out of here. And he has the 4th land, so he can play True Name anyway.
And now David knows that he's staring down True Name Nemesis plus Umezawa's Jitte starting very soon.
Yes. One of the best reasons to play True Name is the equipment you get to throw on it.
Yeah, and David shuffling the cards around in his hand like a man who has seen this before.
Yeah, there are many decks that they use their resources, fight, and then someone resolves a True Name Nemesis, and it's like, well, now I have no more answers.
And in some ways, Merfolk is actually more equipped than most decks to handle it, because Island Walk is a reasonable out to a defensive True Name Nemesis, but in conjunction with equipment, it's just brutal on these kind of decks.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough to fight that. David, no play. Michael playing the Jitte. Or
I assume he's sacking his Misty Rainforest here because he plans on wastelanding David this turn.
Grabbing the Volcanic Island.
Interestingly enough, David's Merfolk list has cut the cards Daze and Wasteland entirely. Two staples of Merfolk decks. It appears to basically have been replaced with Gitaxian Probe and some mixture of Cavern of Souls and Mishra's Factories.
So he does equip the Jitte and sends the Merfolk in there. Merfolk on Merfolk crime here. And David's going to violin another Regery, which the Jitte takes care of.
And I like Michael immediately killing it with the Jitte. The only way that this gets hairy really for him is if David is somehow able to chain together multiple Lords. And if they're able to outpace the size of what the Jitte can handle. So taking any opportunity to get a Lord off the table, I think, is a good play for him.
So David got in with the Curse Catcher, and now he's using Phantasmal Image.
Phantasmal Image copying the opposing True Name Nemesis. Protection from opponents does not prevent Phantasmal Image from cloning. So,
wow.
Of course, one of these players has a piece of equipment to go along with it. One doesn't. And you couldn't even equip the Phantasmal Image because it would just kill it, but you got to start somewhere.
Although if he gets Island Walk, his True Name will be unblockable as well. Is that another True Name Nemesis?
Alongside Delver Secrets, and that empties out Michael's hand. And now we'll see Wasteland go somewhere. Michael debating between the Cavern and the Mistress Factory. Not too relevant here. Eventually decides on Cavern.
So his True Name Image getting in there. But 2 True Name better than 1. Transforms the Delver here with the Force of Will. Now, of course, Michael's swinging in for 9 a turn plus the Jitte.
Yeah, this is going to be a quick wrap here. And David has had enough, and we go onto the sideboard.
Right. What's Michael got to bring in here?
Well, Michael is playing something fairly similar to, again, the list that we saw Owen Turnwald win Grand Prix Washington, D.C. He has a Wear and Tear, a Sword of Feast of Famine, a Source of Plowshares. He has cut 1 copy from his main deck and moved to the sideboard. 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 4 Meddling Mage, 2 Grimlock Minister, and 2 Flusterstorm. The most noteworthy cards are here: the additional copy of Source of Plowshare, the 2 Red Elemental Blast, and the 2 Grim Lavancers. Additional removal, always good against Merfolk, critical to keep them off of a Density of Lords, so every 1-mana removal spell very valuable. And Grim Lavamancer, again, capable of winning the game by itself, again, assuming that you're able to suppress the various Lords. On David's side of the table, he has an Umezawa's Jitte, a Dismember, an Echoing Truth, 2 Relic of Progenitus, a Surgical Extraction, a Pithy Needle, Arcane Laboratory, 2 Back to Basics, 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Swan Song, and a Chalice of the Void. Back to Basics could be an unexpected haymaker here. The Blue-White-Red Delver deck, again, no basic lands in the list. You don't really see Back to Basics in that many Merfolk sideboards, so unlikely that Michael will really be actively playing around this card. And in addition to that, I believe that David's going to want perhaps his 1 copy of Chalice of the Void. It wouldn't surprise me if that's for more dedicated combo matchups, but there's a lot of 1 casting cost cards in the Delver decks, of course, Delver the Secrets itself, plus a litany of cantrips and cheap removal spells. And he may want the Pithing Needle as an additional answer to Equipment or Stoneforge Mystic itself. The Dismember is another removal spell, and perhaps an Umezawa's Jitte of his own.
Back to Basics, a card Joe Bernal used in a Esper Stoneblady list he was playing with in Baltimore, I believe, where he just caught people with their pants down and you don't get to cast spells anymore.
Yeah, and Brian Brondwin's over in the feature match area now, or perhaps has already intentionally drawn. He's 7-0, and he's also playing his own Counterbalance Sensei's Divining Top Back to Basics list as well. So, so a lot of, or a Blood Moon list as well, rather. So a lot of non-basic land hate in these control lists.
I'm really interested in what you think of the cutting of Wasteland in the Merfolk list, because I feel like these aggressive tribal decks are decks that exactly want.
Yeah, it is a curious decision to me. It's, you know, in some respects it's the most powerful card in the deck. In some respects it accentuates the worst parts of the deck, which is when you don't have Aether Vial, it's very hard for you to do anything. You have a lot of double blue spells and not a lot of islands in the deck. David is playing more blue sources than most Merfolk lists. He does have 11 islands alongside 3 Cavern Souls, which are effectively blue mana sources for the purposes of his deck. So he has 14 instead of 12, but he still has 7 dedicated colorless lands in Mutavault and 3 copies of Mistress Factory. I personally would not be able to get away from playing Wasteland in this list, although I know I've talked to Ben Lundquist. He's a coworker of mine and resident Merfolk expert, and he often complains about Wasteland and Daze both being below average in the deck, and but feeling like he can't play one without the other. And his default supposition is, well, I had to leave in Wasteland and Daze in the deck because it doesn't really make sense to play one without the other. They're very good in conjunction with one another. David's kind of gone the other route and said, well, how about we just remove both?
Right. If you can't play one without the other, axe them both.
Yep. So David with a different smattering of non-basic lands. The typical Merfolk list you see are 12 island, 4 Wasteland, 4 Mutavault. That's sort of the industry standard. But
using Wasteland to just generate free wins occasionally.
Yes. Time is not on your side with these decks, especially, Merfolk lists are often saturated, not David's list, but with Dazes and Spell Pierces and all these very time-sensitive cards. So Wasteland naturally fits in the deck in a number of respects, but you can't argue with having additional man lands, really. Mistress Factory as a supplemental man land alongside Mutavault. And of course, Cavern of Souls helps with the double blue issue the deck often has when it doesn't have Aether Vial. and also allows it to get around opposing counter spells as well.
Just force your guys through.
Yep. And most of the blue decks can really only beat you if they are able to counter your early lords. Once you have a saturation of them in play, they can't block with their creatures anymore, and it's fairly easy to run away with the game from there.
Michael knows a thing or two about blue creatures as well. He top 8'd the Nashville Standard Open playing mono blue. So no stranger to the Open Series top tables.
A good run yesterday too, fell a little bit short, but he made a deep run in yesterday's very large Standard Open.
Yes. His feature match, he eliminated Chris Fennell, who was playing the interesting mono green devotion build with the blue splash.
Yeah, one of the odder decks that we saw. Chris had a pretty abrupt end to his tournament. 2 matches on camera both ended in pretty bizarre fashion with him losing both times.
Yes. So our players are looking at their 7-card hands here.
And David's hand does, his opening hand does contain back to basics, so we might see this come into play.
Yep. Starts off with Curse Catcher. Both players keeping their 7.
Michael's hand really flush removal, a lot of bolts. Appears to have Grim Lavamancer as well, so.
Plays the Misty Rainforest.
Very strong opening hand. Grim Lavamancer, Stoneforge Mystic, a couple lands, and some removal spells. About as good as you can draw it up.
What was so effective last game was him just having all of those 1-mana removal spells to deal with the lords, and never letting them get out of control.
And 1 mana is the critical thing there. There's such a difference between, Lightning Bolt and Abrupt Decay in terms of efficiency and your ability to do other things.
David gets in for 1, plays the Silver Gill Adept, and reveals the Merfolk from his hand to...
One of Legacy's more common tongue twisters.
Yes. Drawing the card.
And now David has apparently drawn Force of Will this turn to pair with his back to basics. So if he's able to draw a 3rd land, we might see a very fast and bizarre end to this game.
So it looks like Michael went for the bolt.
He either targeted Curse Catcher or David was willing to use his Curse Catcher to save his Adept.
Yeah. Silvergill Adept, the card going with Mutavault there like it's supposed to. Not Mutavault showing up in Theros and all the fun we see in Standard.
Brainstorm for Michael. Card accidentally fell off of Michael's deck here, so I think they're just going to shuffle up here.
This is the thing from watching a ton of tournament Magic lately that I'm really surprised at how often it happens, and the quick ways to deal with it. And then some players I see it just never happens to. I am sloppy with my cards when I try to draw, so it's an issue. But, people like BBD I see almost never fumble their cards.
Yeah.
So another skill that comes with many reps.
So deciding what he's going to step back with Brainstorm here. Looks like he does have a fetch land, so the 2 that he puts back, he's saying goodbye to for now.
That's exactly what he does. The Scalding Tarn to play his Grim Lavamancer. Another card that can wreck, these Merfolk before the Lords pump them out of,
Grim Lavamancer can be a beast in this matchup.
And the Silvergill comes across. Michael does not want to get in the way. We have
Pithing Needle to play. Very quickly naming Grim Lavamancer.
It does appear that David's sideboard plan was pretty... He knew what he wanted to do in this matchup.
Yep. Michael looking at a ponder here of 3 lands. He's currently missing white mana and a 3rd land drop, so I anticipate him wanting to keep at least one of these. And he says yes.
To the Tundra. And passes. David's got a loaded hand here.
It's a lot of 3 mana spells, but no 3rd land.
It's another instance, like you mentioned, where the non-vial hands are tough to get going.
Yeah.
Sending in the Mutavault and the Curse Catcher.
And David's actually making more of an effort than most to try to mitigate the situation here. He has an additional land in his deck and additional blue sources as well.
So
But
Michael
he's
goes
still
for the swords here. Force of Will from David. And he throws the Grim Lavamancer in the way.
with the needle in front and no answer on the horizon here for that needle. Michael will take the opportunity to trade.
Yep. And end of turn deals with the Mutavault, leaving David with one land and a handful of expensive spells.
Yeah, and now we're going to see Stoneforge Mystic and things start to get pretty bad for David. He had a window there where drawing the third land would have been exceptionally good for him, but that window has likely passed, and now we enter this phase of the game as you see Michael with a Batterskull.
Get your foil copy of Batterskull, GP Richmond.
I like the plug. Seamless.
I would argue the foil promo is the better art, actually.
Dismember here from David, taking down the Stoneforge Mystic, but not clear if this is a long-term plan, as Michael is in hard casting Batterskull range pretty soon.
Right, and David trying to ride a 2-1 all the way to victory here. Michael with another Stoneforge. Grabbing the Jete. So Michael has a handful of equipment that just wrecks the Merfolk deck.
Yeah, but that draw step that turn appeared to be Force of Will, and that offers David no help. So now we've seen this song and dance before.
Sends the 2-1 in again. And now it's up to Michael to decide which way he wants to crush his opponent's dreams.
He's also drawn True Name Nemesis, so a lot of different roads here that he can take to win this game in convincing fashion.
Yes. There's the vial, right on time. And Michael uses the turn to get in the Batterskull with the BBD Germ token.
And now we may see the other piece of the puzzle as Umezawa's Jite about to be equipped to Batterskull.
That is a lot of equipment.
There's a time where a lot of this was legal to do in Standard. Wasn't that long ago. And David, still no second land.
Just handful of 3-mana cards.
Had his window, but now that has closed.
Now this Germ is going to seal the deal pretty quickly.
Germ connects. Jite triggers.
Embarrassment of riches at this point. Drop a True Name. David will fight with a Force of Will, pitching the back to basics.
Yeah. Cruelly tempting him in his hand for the majority of the game.
And David scoops him up and shows off the
Gripful True Name Nemesis that he could not cast. Michael Majors, a very no fuss, no muss type of win here. Very straightforward beat down to Merfolk.
Yep.
Stoneforge Mystic back by removal, still good against Merfolk. Monitor if we are going back to the booth. So Michael Majors